Whenever you are ready.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. Teresa Gates.
Hi, I'm Chandra McCormick.
Hi, I'm Patty Carey.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
Good morning.
So video take 2 here. Where's my, I am going to start a screen share so I can share with you the food that I studied with my culture. And the first one was rice. And it was Japanese rice, to be more specific. And it's a short grain, sticky white rice, and it's served plain. No soy sauce, no flavorings, no eggs, anything else, just plain white, sticky rice. It's so important to the Japanese culture that it's actually been called the essence of the culture. Examinations of Japanese culture revealed the complex connection rice has to many of its forms and expressions, not only historically, but in contemporary settings as well. One tradition, which is the wet rice cultivation, is very labor intense and not easily accomplished. So many of the families would pull together and they would even share their water to accomplish the task. This caused the families to have to kind of build their homes in clusters, which brought them closer together and encouraged harmony and teamwork. The rice cultivation was seen somewhat as a ritual, which invited harmony to the families. To me, this shows that the Japanese culture had very strong values and that harmony amongst the people was very important to them. Rice is a symbol in Japan. The word gohan is Japanese word for cooked rice. It's also the Japanese word for meal, which symbolizes that the Japanese associate rice with every single meal.
Oh, wow.
Again, rice was so important to the Japanese culture that in the past it was actually used as currency.
Wow.
Yeah, against popular belief, we all think of Japan, we think of rice. But it's really not an overabundance in Japan, and it actually costs the Japanese 5 times more than it costs Americans.
Wow, that's incredible.
So due to the strong culture beliefs, the government won't allow rice to be imported from the U.S. And also, the major rice in the United States is not your short grain sticky rice. It's the long grain that doesn't stick together that well. And the Japanese, being the simplification and the culture driven as they are, they like to simplify things. So if they use the sticky rice with their meals, they can use that same ingredient to make their sushi and other things as well.
Oh my gosh.
So can you only grow sticky rice in Japan?
No, America does grow sticky rice, but it's not its #1 rice. The one we grow the most of is the long grain rice because it's mostly preferred by the American people.
I actually prefer the sticky rice. What do you prefer?
Yeah, sticky rice.
I love it.
I do too. I don't know, the texture of it's just better. I enjoy it way more. So.
I don't know if I could eat it plain though.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I couldn't eat it plain. I like it, with some soy sauce, maybe some butter and sugar or something to that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, not plain. Agree.
So the government won't let them. They can't get any of it from us.
From anyone.
So
you can't bring it in at all right now.
Can everyone get rice if it's so important in the culture? I mean, is that just something that?
If you think about the cost of it that it is right now, 5 times more than we pay. Apparently, not everyone in the country can afford rice. I mean, I would still think even at 5 times more, rice is pretty cheap. A good word. It's not an expensive commodity. Cheap. Yeah, so I mean, if we pay $2 a bag, they may pay $10 a bag. But one bag of rice, will make a lot of rice for quite a while. So
I
remember eating a lot of it as a child. There were 6 of us at times. So.
Yep, you're right. We did too.
Yeah.
Hey, Teresa, in your research, do you know why it's so scarce or why it's 5 times?
I don't. I guess it's just the lands aren't as abundant to grow it as they are here. So there's just not a lot of people that farm it anymore. I mean, in the past it was farmed more, but it was just it was considered currency at one time. So I mean, it was it's always been important, but apparently doesn't grow as well or is not as much farmlands to grow it on as we have here in the U.S.
You know, and when you were mentioning that, and then I thought of the picture, I suppose that's why with chopsticks, sticky rice is probably a lot easier to eat
Oh, yeah.
than
Yeah,
the others. I've never had it, so you guys both have, but.
Oh,
yeah,
you've never tried it?
Never tried sticky rice? Wow.
I'm gonna have to make you some. Really, that does make sense because I've never been able to use chopsticks except for like with the stuff that I put on the rice. But you're right, sticky rice would be way easier to eat with the chopsticks.
Yeah, and that was actually called out in some of the research. It was another, it was number one, they just enjoyed the flavor and the texture of the sticky rice. Number two, it simplified things. They needed one ingredient so they could make sushi. And then number three, it was easier to eat. The chopsticks would, it would pile up better on the chopsticks.
Right.
Long grain rice, go to a Chinese place here in America and try to eat long grain rice with chopsticks.
Yeah,
unless
you get like 3 pieces.
Everything else, not happening.
Well, and that might be what is a source of frustration because a lot of places don't have the sticky rice. So if you're trying to eat it with the chopsticks, we're like, I just don't get this. I just don't get it. And that could be we're not eating what is truly what they eat.
Right. Exactly. And a lot of places have it, but they have it like you don't notice it because it's like on the buffets and stuff. They've got the fried rice that's the long grain that's over to the side in a crock pot is that steamed sticky rice.
Oh.
And most people don't see it and notice it there, but it's there.
Oh, wow.
So next time you go to a Chinese buffet, see if you can find it.
Very interesting.
Okay, I am going to move on to my second food and culture, which was a Hawaiian poi. And poi is a food that's considered especially important to the Hawaiian culture. It's a tradition in the Hawaiian culture. In 1887, it was served with every single meal in the schools, and shortages of the taro crops, which is the root that's used to make poi, due to sugar cane crops using the land, caused the poi to be replaced with potatoes in the meals. And it was such a tradition and everyone was so used to having it that actual food fights broke out in schools in a reflection of the ethocentrism, which is, the fondness of and the deep felt belief of your own culture and hostility towards others. So the kids saw that as they were hostile towards it because they were so used to having the poi that when they were replaced with potatoes, they became hostile.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there was such a strong belief that they lashed out when it wasn't part of their meal.
It looks like pudding.
Yeah, it looks like a thick pudding, but it's purple. I just don't know if I've ever had a purple pudding. Also in Hawaiian culture, the taro plant is associated with Haloa, who is the god who represents the original ancestors of the Hawaiian people, and it's symbolized by the taro plant. The cropping of the taro is very important because it brings families together. So here we see harmony again with this culture, so kind of like the Japanese with their rice cultivations. This shows how important families are to the Hawaiian people and their culture. The taro root is actually cooked underground in an oven called an emu. And as you can see here in this picture on the left, this is the actual making of poi, how it was made years ago, and it's how it's still made today.
Oh my gosh.
It's usually made by a male wearing nothing but a loincloth. He has to have very clean hands, can't have any cuts or scrapes or anything on his hands. He has a bowl of water on the left and the taro root on the right. He takes a stone and starts to pound the root and slowly adds water to it as he breaks it down into a sweet, sticky dough-like substance.
Wow. So then is it ready to eat as it is there, or is there something else that has to be done to it after that?
It can be eaten there. A lot of the Hawaiians actually prefer it to kind of sit and ferment for a few days because it gives it like a sour texture. Some of them like the sour texture. Some of them like more of the sweet texture. It was traditionally enjoyed with fresh feet. I'm sitting here looking at fresh feet, seaweed, breadfruit, and sweet potatoes. It's very tasty and nutritious. And one of the most interesting things I found about it, besides the fact, as you can see in the picture here on the bottom, they would usually enjoy it out of the same pot. They also didn't use utensils when they ate poi. They
Oh my
would use their
gosh.
fingers. So poi was referred to as one finger, two finger, or three finger poi, depending on the thickness of the substance.
Wow.
The two finger poi was considered the best.
It had to be somewhat thick then. I mean, I know you said he made it into like a sweet dough.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think it, I mean, because the first picture looked like it was a pudding consistency, but then when you said he made it into a dough, is it more, did they say, is it more like a bread texture then?
So it starts out as the dough, and then they add water, and the more water they add and pound into the dough, the thinner it becomes and the more pudding-like it becomes.
Oh, okay. And so that gives your finger levels.
Yep, that would give you your finger levels. If you get too much water, you got the three fingers, or it's almost like eating soup with your fingers. And not enough water, you can get a lot on the one finger. But if you get it just right, the two fingers is supposed to be the best poi.
Well, that gives a new meaning to double dipping.
Yeah.
I don't know if I do that with anyone other than my family.
I know, right?
Hey, Teresa, in your research, did it tell you if they still eat poi just with their fingers?
They do. I actually found some. It was very interesting. I found some pictures, on Google Image and things like that of modern day, and people standing around. Now they did have their own bowls, but they were standing around with wooden bowls of purple substance, and they were eating it with their fingers.
Oh wow!
So wouldn't that be different if you went to Hawaii and depending on your culture or whatever, it would somewhat be culture shock if you went to a restaurant and they're serving poi and everybody's just
eating with
their fingers. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be neat though to just see it.
It would be.
And last but definitely not least, the bowl of poi was considered such an important and sacred part of Hawaiian life that any time a bowl was opened or uncovered at the family dinner table, it was believed that the spirit of Hola, the god, the ancestor of the Hawaiian people, was present. And because they believed this, if there was any conflict going on amongst the family members or anyone in the room, it had to come to an immediate halt because of this sacred poi being opened into their homes.
Oh, wow. So did they say like any kind of words like to honor, I mean, do they like pray, not necessarily pray, but...
No, it basically, it just said that it was considered sacred. So it's kind of like, to me, for my culture, it'd be like being in the church. You just don't do and say certain things when you're in the church.
You just kind of stop.
Going on, everything stops.
Right.
And you're at peace. So it was kind of like it just stopped and they were at peace when the poi was uncovered.
Right. Well, and I have one question. You said that it was nutritious. Do you have any idea like what kind of vitamins or anything like that?
You can actually get a nutritional, on Google, you can actually get a nutritional statement on it. Of course, it depends on how much water is added, because the more you dilute it, the less the calories and things like that are. But if I remember correctly, they actually compared it to a sweet potato.
Oh, okay.
Not the same. It's got a lot of the same vitamins and stuff as the sweet potato does. It's just depending on the thickness of it.
Right.
One spoon of thinner, maybe less than one spoon of thicker. So,
oh, wow.
It has quite of an elaborate process for making it also. I wonder what like the shelf life is per se on it. So if you're just smashing it by hand and it's a gentleman doing it outside just in his loincloth, I mean, how often would they make it? They're talking about having it at a lot of meals.
Yeah, they make it every day. They made it every day.
Oh, holy cow.
Different families. I mean, something, the family would do or someone in the village would do. They would make it pretty much on a daily basis. But remember, when you're pounding the root, you're just getting the thick dough. You add water, you can add water to break off pieces of the dough and add water to it and actually create a bowl of poi.
Oh, okay.
So that thick dough, like I said, it's kind of like having a concentrate. You have a big bowl of it and then you break it down a little bit at a time.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I think I would actually try it. Not positive, but I think I would. But I heard you mention the shelf life, and it did say that most Hawaiians actually preferred it to be a bit fermented. Because it gives it a slightly sour taste. So, some people would eat it fresh, but a lot of them would want it to set for quite a while.
Oh,
wow.
So it would ferment and give them that taste.
Huh.
Well, it's interesting how the two different ones that you had are kind of similar.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that too. It was like, both of them showed that the cultures believed in the harmony of the people, and they wanted things where people worked together and shared things together and enjoyed things together. So, yeah, very interesting.
That was
And
good.
then for my third one, my field log, I actually did it on 4th of July barbecue. Uh-oh. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. It gave me a warning. It said you couldn't, so. So the neighborhood that I've recently moved into, I will have been here 2 years at the end of August. They actually have every year a 4th of July barbecue and street party. And the festivities really kick off about 9:30 in the morning when they have a children's parade, and everyone meets at the school just down the street. And the
Holy
kids
cow.
decorate their bicycles, their wagons, my son has a little electric Jeep, and things like that. And we have the local fire department come, and the fire truck actually leads the parade
Oh my gosh.
and allows the kids. We do 1 mile. We go down one street and up another one and down another one to get 1 mile in, and then turn around and go back. So it's pretty fun. I think they told me this year when I asked her, she said that this was either the 8th or the 11th annual. I think it was the 8th annual parade.
Wow.
Where they have done this, so they've done it for quite some time. Which is basically there's flyers passed out to the entire neighborhood of the parade and the barbecue. They're put in your door, so everyone's welcome, everyone's invited. The grandma on the block, the lady that actually I had the pleasure of living right next door to, hosts this event every year, and her husband's a farmer. So they usually, bring in the meats and prepare the meats, and then everyone else is asked to bring a dish of their choice. And it was pretty interesting again this year because we have some Indian natives that live in the neighborhood this year, and of course my southern cooking that was brought into the mix. So we had, Midwest, Southern, and Indian food. So it was very interesting. You get to try a lot of neat things. I asked a few questions of Grandma about the party, and she was, why do you do this? And she was like, I just really like to know all of my neighbors and befriend all my neighbors. Just want them to know that she's there for them and that hopefully they'll be there for her. They're really, really close-knit people. I left my garage open one night, and I think 5 different people came and told me my garage was open.
Oh my
God. That's so awesome.
That's so nice because it's kind of a lost tradition anymore where people know their neighbors. So that's great that you have that.
I know. I'm very blessed to be there. So I talked to Sally next door, and she says it's just a great neighborhood to live in. We're all very close-knit. We don't only enjoy great food and company, she says, but we also score with new babysitters who become of age over the winter. So that's a dime in itself. And when she said that, it's funny because when I first moved in, I moved in kind of at the end of summer. So there was a few weeks there where I got to see a lot of people all the time. And then wintertime hits, and it's like a ghost town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's just because it's so cold, no one wants to go outside. So and I thought that was very interesting. Everyone doesn't see everyone over the winter, and then when summer pops back up again, you start seeing people again. You notice that, someone's expecting and that the kid is now 14 and can babysit and different things of that nature. So it is only one event a year, but I feel like that one event, ties everyone together. And again, I'm going to use the harmony, because there is so much harmony here on the block because of it. Share a quick story. My husband and my little boy went out last night to play bags on the front deck, and within 20 minutes, I think, 4 houses were in my driveway.
Oh.
4 houses of people were in my driveway.
Oh, that's awesome.
And a truck pulled up, and about 8 people gets out of this truck. There's 5 people, or five kids, mom and dad, so 7 people. And apparently they're the neighbors from 3 houses down that moved 2 years ago. And they still come back and visit the street. And that was
Oh my gosh.
crazy to me. the people's house that I bought still come back and visit on the 4th of July and do the holiday festivities. So,
wow.
So that tells me that the harmony's working.
Yeah.
You know, they base it around the barbecue, and really the only norm food that they have every single year is the burgers. They have burgers and hot dogs. Everything else is just whatever anyone wants to bring in.
Oh, that's so awesome.
So,
Well, and it's such a great example of exactly what we're studying right now. Look who's coming to dinner. Everybody brought something from their culture, especially when you have the Indian culture and your Southern culture and the classic American culture. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. We shoot off fireworks till about midnight, and it helped me being new to Nebraska and not really knowing a lot of people unless I worked with them. It really helped me to meet people. And most of the people I know that's not associated with work is associated with people on my street.
That's really fortunate. You're very fortunate to live in a neighborhood like that because, it just doesn't happen a lot these days anymore.
You're right. It doesn't.
Pretty awesome. I'm pretty blessed, so I'm glad I chose this house to live in. So.
Yeah, because you didn't know your neighbors before you picked the house.
No, I did meet them one of the days when I came and looked at it. One of Grandma, the lady next door, and her husband and the people across the street were sitting outside in the yard playing with a baby. So I did meet them, you know, when I came to look at the house. They came over and introduced themselves, and my first week I didn't have to cook a meal.
Oh my gosh,
my dinner every day. It was awesome.
Wow.
That is awesome.
I want to live there. Can I come live with you? Oh, wow. Very nice. Good job. I guess I can go next.
Okay.
So let me share my screen here. I'm going to start with Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Okay. So this is interesting. For both of mine, I actually learned quite a bit of things I did not know. Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine. Even though tourist areas depicting Pennsylvania Dutch people are often portrayed with windmills, wooden shoes, Netherlands, they actually have nothing to do with those things. In fact, they're a culture group of people who came from Germany and Switzerland in the late 17th and 18th centuries and settled in southeastern and south central Pennsylvania. Their name came from a poor case of translating the German word Deutsch as Dutch. So Pennsylvania Dutch people aren't from the Netherlands at all. They're from Germany and Switzerland. So for their food, you know, many of the settlers were poor and they rarely ate meat. They had to be creative. Commonly, something that they ate were called hairy dumplings, which does not sound too appetizing.
It does not.
It was made with shredded potatoes that stuck out when the dumplings were boiled. Another favorite was a one-pot dish called gumbus, which you can see over to the right, and that is a casserole of shredded cabbage, meat, dried fruit, and onions. The thrifty meal could be cooked on an open fire, and it would often be eaten by dunking bread into a shared pot rather than using utensils or bowls. So it's kind of like your poi, but at least they were using bread to dunk instead of their computers.
Chandra, do you know what kind of meat it was?
Well, so it's probably because they were so poor, it was going to be any kind of meat that they could get their hands on. In everything that I read, it wasn't like one kind of meat was preferred by them. It was whatever they had at the time. So
it kind of looks like sausage in the picture.
Yeah, in the picture, in this one it does. So it could be probably any kind of part of the animal, actually.
Yeah.
So Pennsylvania Dutch food is very hearty and filling. What they made depicted their lifestyle. So when they first settled, they didn't have the use of modern technology such as refrigeration, so they had to use antiquated ways to prepare food. They would typically preserve their fresh vegetables by pickling them. They would also reduce waste whenever possible. This came up with creative ways to use all parts of the animals they ate. One dish showing this practice is a dish called scrapple. Scrapple is made by combining ground scraps of pork that include parts of various organs and the head, and then with various grains and spices. It's made
good. No.
It's made in large quantities, formed into a loaf, and stored. And then when it's ready to be served, they slice it off and then fry it. So to me, it reminds me a lot of maybe like Spam, except that this did have the grains and spices in it. Which are, it could have been any kind of thing. Again, whatever they could get their hands on is what was used for this kind of stuff. And there are a lot of one-pot meals, adding whatever they could into a pot and serving that as the meal.
You know, the picture of it, it kind of looks appetizing. I thought it was like a banana bread, but then once you've told me everything that's in it, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, and I noticed a lot of the pictures that I found for the different foods that they talked about, which I had never heard of any of these foods before, ever. But a lot of the pictures, like you said, looked really good and appetizing, and then when I read what they were completely different than what I thought that they were. So the Pennsylvania Dutch, they prided itself with a wide range of cakes and pies and other baked goods that tend to be well spiced. One traditional dessert that might be found in a Pennsylvania Dutch home is shoe fly pie. This pie is made of molasses, which can attract flies, aptly earning its name. So I don't know. That even doesn't sound too appetizing to me. I'm not sure.
I've had shoe fly pie is actually quite popular in the South as well. I've had it. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's really kind of a thick, chewy substance caused by the molasses being cooked down, but it's just not a flavor that I enjoy. The crust on kind of good, but other than that, not a flavor I enjoy.
Very interesting. As a closed society, the Pennsylvania Dutch have preserved their culture and traditions with little outside influence. However, they have influenced their surrounding neighbors, whom appreciate and experience many specialties from the Pennsylvania Dutch menu. So I was looking through our definitions, and one that reminded me that, where did I use? Let's see. There was something that... Maybe it was enculturation, process by which people learn the requirements of their surrounding culture and acquire values and behaviors appropriate or necessary in that culture.
That would work.
Yeah. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting that that the people around them, even though that's not what they were grown up with, they really enjoy a lot of the things that the settlers brought over with them. So another dish over to the left there is pronounced snitzenep. It's a staple in the Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine. Its main ingredients are dried apples, ham, flour, milk, and eggs. So again,
that sounds good.
Yeah, I think so too.
And so for me, I grew up in the South, and I know that I think this was more just my family than being in the South, but we didn't really have sweet foods with our regular foods together. So it was really hard for me to come to where I'm at now, and people would have like, pineapple with their ham or different things like that. It was hard for me to combine the two, or any kind of Chinese food where they have sweet stuff in it or anything like that.
Or chili and cinnamon rolls. That one got me here. They have cinnamon rolls with their chili. I don't get that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I've never done that either.
No.
It was a long time before I could start combining my sweet foods with my regular foods. We always just had sweet foods as dessert. So, but yeah, it looks like they did a lot of that here, whatever they could throw into a pan.
Yeah.
So, another thing that I found interesting, it seems like over and over they kept saying that, like in tourist traps, they depict this cultural group as something that they're not. And some of the foods they have are whoopie pies, seafood bisque, chili, large buffets. But that's not really what they're about at all. So it's more like they're just portraying that because it's something easy that they can feed a bus of tourists cheaply. And then, look, we're the Pennsylvania Dutch. So
it sounds like they were very conservative, and they would make foods that fed a lot of people. It's simplified, one pot, fed a lot of people at low cost.
Yep, absolutely. And so they were, always together, and just very, very strong values. And something else that I had read was they kept saying, you know, sometimes they're synonymous with the Amish, but they're not all. But to me, that says that they have a lot of qualities that the Amish have, you know, for them to be compared with it. But they were, you know, had all different religions coming from there. But just very make everything yourself. Just, you know, use what you have. Use every resource. There's nothing that's wasted. That kind of thing.
Nice.
I wonder, when I look at your pictures and then when you talk about it, it makes me think I wonder if that's where Dutch oven came from, because it was the one-pot meals and those that you use a lot over the campfire.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah, that's a very good call. I'm going to get my next one. Hold on just a second here.
Is this making you hungry?
Yes.
Me too.
I've had coffee, so I'm hungry.
Okay, I actually had to let my dog out because she was whining. Trying to do it smoothly. But I guess since I just told you, that kind of broke my cover. So
I heard her. I
Yeah, I did too.
Yawning or whining or.
well, oh goodness. Okay, so let's see. My next one, this was very interesting to me. I have never heard of this before in my life. So the first thing I had to do was figure out how to pronounce this. This is the very first thing I Googled because I could not fathom how to put a T and an L together and make a sound. So the way they pronounce it is plinkett. And what it is the K and the L, it's kind of a breathy L. It's not something that's really in our language or something that we can do very well, but it's just linkett is how,
Linkett.
Yeah, almost like the T is silent. And then the G is a K. So linkett. So
okay.
this is one of the larger native tribes inhabiting Alaska today. And linkett actually means people. And then a potlatch is a gift-giving feast. And this word comes from the Chinook jargon meaning to give away. Potlatches were treated as a social occasion often used to celebrate an important event in the host's family's life, such as a birth, marriage, or any significant ritual performed by the tribe. The Tlingits are also hosted memorial potlatches to commemorate the dead. So the foremost difference between a feast and a potlatch is the gift-giving aspect. In addition to the large quantities of food shared at a potlatch, the host would lavishly distribute gifts to the invited guest, such as blankets, beads, carved items, baskets, and other material objects that exhibited the host's wealth. In fact, it could easily have taken a year or longer to save money, plan, and prepare a potlatch, sometimes leading the host to take out a loan because expenses are so high. Dancing, singing, storytellers, and other forms of entertainment were commonly included during the potlatch as well. So let me elaborate on this a little bit. This wasn't just a little gathering. This was a major event, and the people would just have to spend sometimes more than a year and plan this and get enough money to produce this, because all of the food and all of the gifts were given from the host. Everyone else just came to participate. Sometimes the host would have the guests bring gifts as well to give to other guests, but the majority of this was the host giving to the guests.
How did they decide who came to the potlatch? Were they invited, or just everybody showed up, or?
Nope, they were definitely invited. A lot of times potlatches were used as a way to prove their wealth and reinforce their social status within the community. So I think if it was for an event, it's going to be, of course, family, anyone else in the community that you wanted to share in this and see your wealth. And so I don't even think it would necessarily have to be someone that you cared for.
Or even do, right?
Right, exactly. Right. And then they would also use it to build relationships with other prominent leaders in the tribe. So,
it was a showcase to say, look at me, look how important I am and how much stuff I have.
Yep. And everything they did, this was a way of their life. Now, some of the foods that they had, they do inhabit a geographical area along the Pacific coast, so many of them work in the salmon industry. And so, as such, foods served at a potlatch vary depending on the season, of course, but it usually included salmon, whale, seal, deer, seaweed, berries, and roots, all accompanied by seal oil to dip the food in.
That sounds very rich.
Yes, very rich. The foods most valued, of course, are those that are scarce or required rigorous efforts to prepare. And it was always served in an overabundance and was not expected to be finished. They would prefer that the guests take the remainder of the food home to share with the community. So they always made way more. I mean, there were even stories about people getting ill because they ate so much food. It was always everything. It was in excess.
So like a potluck, everybody goes and just eats like crazy, right?
Yep. And there was always way too much food.
Yeah.
So, and I read a couple things where it did compare this to a potluck, and I don't know if people were just, if it really did come from that, or they were just, they kind of sound similar. Here's the similarities of it. Yeah. But yeah, I think that the biggest thing in a potluck is for us, there's not typically, and everybody brings something to share. It's not, there may be a host of it, but they usually provide maybe a larger portion than the rest, but it's still just a portion. It's nothing that's going to make them go bankrupt.
Right. So it's like it's an equal cost. We may host it here, but we're all going to have about the same amount of skin in the game.
Yep, exactly. So for them, a potlatch is not considered just a social occasion, but an entire economic system. Many times the person hosting a potlatch, and we talked about that, how they used it as a way to prove their wealth. And potlatches are still practiced today. People no longer go bankrupt or become poor in order to host one. However, they will still spend quite a bit of time and money in the preparation of food and gifts for their guests. They're a great way for natives to honor their history, traditions, and beliefs of their ancestors. So from what I understand, it's even more of a ritual, because this is something that they've always done. So this is a way when they have an event to honor, what their ancestors did and what they believe, and they just do it a little bit more common sense, like, I think now.
But do they still make all the gifts that they give out?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know that for sure, but with them being Native American, I would say a big portion of them are, because they are so good at making beautiful things, and I think things that are made just have so much more value than something you could buy. Now, some of the things, even a long time ago when it started, they would even give away sometimes money or slaves. I mean, it was It was a lot different now. Now I'm guessing there's going to be more, of the beads and the carved things and things like that.
So not everybody would get the same thing either.
Right. Well, not necessarily. I don't know for sure. I can't imagine that they would. But I know that everything that they gave was going to be very beautiful and just some of the best things that they had.
Wow.
So, let's see. And then my last one, my field log, what I did is a couple of weeks ago, I went to a team building event dinner with my coworkers. And so I used that event to put on my field log. And there were 6 of us, and we were all the same. We were peers at work. So none of us were necessarily friends, but more acquaintances. But we were the same level, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so I just thought it was interesting to compare it, because there were just a lot of things that I thought were different than if you were to go to dinner like with your girlfriends or with your family. So I just kind of picked the things out that I noticed that were different and why they did them. So for one of the first questions I asked if with dinners other places would you typically order appetizers, because we definitely ordered appetizers here. And across the board everyone said no, because appetizers aren't something you have to pay for them. You don't necessarily need that when you're going to have your meal too.
Right.
So, but here it wasn't even a question. It was like, which appetizers are we going to get? Not are we going to order them or not? So I thought that was kind of interesting. That was definitely a big difference. The next question I asked was if you tended to drink alcoholic beverages more or less at these dinners than you normally would, and why. And that was kind of split, which I thought was interesting. So everyone at the table agreed that they would drink alcoholic beverages, like if they were with their family or girls' night out, but half of them just chose not to because they were in a work setting, even though we were all peers. They just their beliefs were that it just wasn't proper, or to get out of hand, or I'm not sure exactly what their reasoning was, but they didn't feel like that was a good place for them to be, and they didn't really judge others for doing it. You could tell it was just their own decision.
And
so
go ahead. So they would never drink at a work event. They would with family, but not at a work event ever, or just this one?
It wasn't ever, and I didn't go too deep in the questioning on this because I didn't want to. Drinking alcohol is kind of a personal thing,
right?
As far as why you're not doing it. So I didn't ask too deeply on this one. So no one said that they wouldn't ever, just that they just weren't comfortable doing it right then.
I was going to say some people just, and I don't even know if it's really a belief, it's just that they feel more comfortable drinking alcohol with their peers, and fitting in, than some people feel more comfortable not partaking at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, right. It's just you, what your thoughts are, and, maybe
right.
how you were raised. Or
Exactly. And, alcohol does affect everyone differently. And
yep.
None of us were young, so, we...
Oh, that was going to be my next question, what the age demographic was.
Yeah.
So that made a difference.
The age demographic was, we were all pretty much the same age. There was one lady that was quite a bit older, but she was definitely our age and heart.
Oh!
So, yeah, it wasn't like so to me, that kind of said something, too, because we've all been in the adult world for a while. So at that point, people know, how alcohol affects them, and maybe when it's proper and when it's not, kind of thing. If there had been a table full of young 20-somethings,
oh yeah,
I'm pretty sure that everyone would have had a drink.
Yep.
Right. You're right.
You're exactly right. Yeah, the interns. Oh yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. And then my other question I had was kind of a two-part. When you're with your coworkers, do you tend to eat more than you would other times? Do you go off any diet restrictions you've placed on yourself? And almost everyone said yes, and it was very apparent. We ordered a lot of food, and we ate a lot of food. And I know that there were several of us that had been, pretty well trying to be healthy and restricting our food intake, and not a single person seemed to care. Everyone had bread, and so it was interesting because to me it seemed, I don't know if it's because the company was paying for it. I know that if I'm in a dinner with work people that are above me, I tend to watch it a little more. I'm a little bit more proper. I don't go overboard. So I thought maybe because we were all peers, everybody was more comfortable as far as eating goes. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. It was definitely, and I've been in these types of dinners before. I just don't think I'd analyzed them the way I was. So the whole dinner, I was kind of picking out the differences between a dinner with my peers that are coworkers, so basically acquaintances, versus friends or family or something like that. And there were quite a bit of differences.
It's funny because that you bring that up. Normally, people would not sit there and analyze a group dinner, so you don't notice the things that come up. And it's interesting that you had that assignment and you were doing it, and the things that you noticed.
Right. Yeah, it was, and it's kind of sad too because we definitely ordered in excess, and I'm sure it's because the company was paying for it. We didn't even think about it. It was our team dinner, so let's enjoy it. But you know, it's a big company, and I'm sure a lot of people do that. So it's just sad that there's so much waste, and it actually made me think later. You know, I was almost disappointed in myself because you know, I never think of it at the time. I'm with everyone else. Let's enjoy it. But then when I started analyzing it and thinking about it later and what had happened at the dinner, I just thought, wow, that, you know, I participated in that, and I'm kind of ashamed.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I believe it is because they don't have to think about the money, so they don't have to worry about, you know, what's this going to do to tomorrow or to my groceries for this week or to anything else for this week. So they're literally, when you're looking at a menu, I mean, I used to travel for work, so we went out and ate 3 meals a day, 4 days a week. So you find yourself not even looking at the money column. All you look at is the food. That's it. You don't even stop and go, oh, I wonder how much this is. It never crosses your mind.
Right. But I know when I go out to dinner with my family, I absolutely look at the prices.
Yeah.
And one thing I hate
is menu first and then find something on there I like.
Absolutely. And one thing I hate is that a lot of times they don't, on the restaurants that have like the fancy drink menus, they don't always put the prices on there.
You're right. They don't.
And a lot of those drinks cost as much as a meal.
That's why they don't put them on there.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's very interesting. It's just funny how we're driven as people and as a culture to, you know, we're constantly thinking about our finances and stuff, and in situations like that, that's all off the table.
Right.
All, you know, and I agree. On almost every time I've ever been, there's been so much food left over. You're just like, really?
Right. And no one takes it home. Yeah. And it's not like you take it with you because almost everyone's in a hotel. So, yeah. So I hope that it makes me look at dinner a little bit differently next time I go out with my coworkers.
Yeah.
Well, that was good. That's interesting.
Very good.
Thanks.
Very good.
I guess I am up next.
You're up,
Patty. So I will share my screen here. And
Patty got a fun one, right?
I had 2 fun ones, actually. So can you guys see the screen?
No.
Oh, hold on. Let me see if I did something wrong here. Open it. I think I was able to do this last time. Why can I not find this?
It's over to the left.
No, I have the screen share and I have my item open. But it is not letting me. Oh, there we go. I think I had it maximized, and it doesn't let you screen share when you maximize. Can you see it now?
No. Oh, yep, there it is. There it is.
I see it.
So I created it in PowerPoint. I had to save to a PDF, so mine might be a little bit different when I'm sharing it with you. So sorry about that. Mine, the 2 that I had, I'm going to kind of describe them in a summary together just because I thought it was so interesting as I started researching on them. Then, since we picked them all randomly, we had the 6 to choose from, and we each picked one and thought, okay, I thought I got tailgating and I got a Hindu wedding. I'm like, I could not have 2 things that are totally opposite. I got religion and I have partying. So I thought this will be really interesting. But then as I started getting into it and researching it, which was a lot of fun, I realized how much they do have in common. So the first one I was going to talk about is tailgating. And what I found interesting is when we also picked it is that neither you or Chandra had really tailgated a lot. And that's actually kind of part of my culture growing up. Being born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, there was always a lot of tailgating going on. But what I found interesting, there wasn't a ton of research out there on tailgating, but the few that did do it, it's just exactly like what I thought. At first, they were thinking of it as a party, but what they found out with the research is it's really like the forming of a community. It's community building. Total strangers end up forming lifelong relationships. They have groups from all different backgrounds that come to what they mainly focused on was football, but tailgating has expanded beyond that. But they come from all different backgrounds, age groups, economic backgrounds, and they all just enjoy sharing each other's companies. And some even compared it to the ancient harvest rituals because it was people coming from all over. They'd all bring something to the harvest rituals. They'd share it, and they'd have the companionship. And that's the same thing with tailgating. So when you look at like even the picture that I have there, it's a group of people joining. It's like the post party to the big event. And a lot of the things that they have on the menu were going to be, I have listed on here, is they had hot, cold snacks, all different types of things. So the main ones, you always had to have a meat there. There was burgers, hot dogs, sausages. Some people did ribs. It's all different kinds of things there. You had cold items for cold cuts. Of course, you always had to have beverages, beer, soda, not very much water, but some, salads. And then they have...
I'm guessing more beer than water, right?
Yes. And then they also had... hold on a minute. Sorry about that. Can you still see it?
Uh-huh.
Okay, good. Snacks, chips, nuts, jerky. Really, there's nothing that was off limits to have at a tailgating party. And the thing that is just so interesting about this is, that I found interesting, is total strangers would interact with each other. Even people on opposite teams still found the tailgating process to be a social event for them. It wasn't the competition that you would see on the field as much as it was a community building. And each of the tailgaters, whoever was hosting it, they would plan their menu with family and friends. And then what they would usually do, similar to what your 4th of July party was, Teresa, is somebody, usually the host, provided the meat, and then other people would sometimes bring in side dishes to share and different things to do. But the main thing that they had at the tailgates is it had to be easy. A lot of them wanted things that you could eat with your hands, because you'd find so many people eating, walking, drinking, walking, socializing, and going portable. From right. It had to be portable, easy, something they could socialize with.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that they highlighted is, really, this has become a ritual for so many people. So if you look at this picture, these Green Bay Packer fans, they're tailgating. They're not in the game. They're sitting at their car enjoying it. And a lot of people bring the comforts of home to do this. And it is not unheard of for people to not even go into the game. So a lot of people that tailgate may never ever have tickets. They go for the social pre-event or pre-game event. And they'll set up their home away from home. They decorate to show their loyalty and pride in their team. And some of it is a tradition that they've been doing for generations. It's a thing they've passed down through families.
That is just crazy.
Yeah.
That just kind of blows my mind that those people are so loyal that they're not even going to the game, and they could be doing the exact same thing in their warm living room. Instead, they're sitting out in the snow.
Yeah, and that's Green Bay, right? So it's cold.
It is cold. Yes, they do have some, and especially around football, because it's a seasonal sport, right? So it's going to be in the fall, and chances are it's going to be cold a lot. It's not always going to be warm, but the people still show up, and some people will show up really early in the morning to set up their space, start their cooking, and they'll be there from 6 a.m. in the morning till 10 p.m. at night.
Wow. That is just, I had no idea. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and it really has expanded. Like I said, a lot of the research was interesting on the internet when you're going through it. When you Google for tailgating, a lot of it came about road rage, people who drive too close, but it was really expanding. You start to see more. They associate a lot with the college sports and then the professional football.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll see it in other sports now. I'll talk about it a little bit more in my field log, but the College World Series is huge for tailgating. NASCAR is huge for tailgating. They have RVs all over the place, and it really is small communities that end up being formed, and people build these friendships, and it's like a family reunion once a year with strangers.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so the next one that I had was a Hindu wedding. And what was great about this is, like I told you, I thought, well, I have religion and tailgating. Well, they both have their own religions. For some, the sport is their religion, and then for the Hindu wedding, it was all about the celebration. What was really amazing to me is a Hindu wedding can last anywhere from a couple hours to even a week, and they're filled with symbolism, tradition, fun, creativity, bright colors. I loved researching these weddings and finding the pictures because, as you'll see, everything was so bright.
Oh, wow.
And it was creative, and they emphasize that, and they're very much rooted in family also. And it's all focused on the new life of the couple, and food plays a huge part of it. They have several, like I said, if it's going a week long, there's going to be a lot of food there.
Yeah.
And there's different things with the wedding. What I thought was interesting is, since the wedding itself, the celebration can be long also, they have food that they serve prior to the wedding, and that's going to be vegetarian meals, so no meat. They have any food that's considered like a aphrodisiac, such as onions and garlic. Those are not served. During the wedding, again, this was interesting, staples like curry, pasta, roasted potatoes, beans, rice. People would eat during the wedding, and they were encouraged. They would walk around. It wouldn't be like, so I'm Catholic, a Catholic wedding where everybody sat in the church and watched the wedding, and then you left from there. Nobody's eating during that. They had people who would be lingering around or moving around and eating during the wedding, watching some of the traditions that were happening, but it was very social. And then after the wedding was completed, then they'd have non-vegetarian choices, and alcoholic beverages would be served.
Oh, wow.
So
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask about the stuff that couldn't be served prior to the wedding, the aphrodisiacs. Was that because of beliefs, or, they didn't want people to be thinking in that mindset before the wedding? I mean,
it didn't go into
that one out there.
Well, I found that interesting too because, maybe my mind went the wrong way. I thought, oh, maybe that encourages the wrong thoughts when you're having this spiritual event. But it didn't go a lot into detail, just that it was, I'm assuming, tradition.
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe purity and stuff like that. So they're wanting to keep everything pure during, prior to the wedding. So
that is a good question. And actually, it makes me wonder more. So I'll have to go back and research that on the side, and then I can follow up with you.
Okay.
But if you look at some of the pictures, even the color of the foods are bright, creative.
Oh, yeah.
Fun. And the food that they serve, it's based on the location where the couple come from. So there's strong traditions, but it will be as individual as the couples. So the couples come from different regions, and it's their home country. So even if they've moved, that's what they base it off of.
Oh, wow.
And then
it's beautiful. The colors are just gorgeous. Even the food colors are just amazing.
Well, and it's so different than like traditional weddings we're used to here in the U.S., where everybody matches, and sometimes it's very muted. The pictures seem to me to produce joy. It just seemed like they were really excited and happy and having fun what they were doing. And then what was really cool.
That's interesting because, like, here in the U.S., and Chandra, I heard you say, they usually all match, or whoever said that, that the wedding is more designed and it's 100% for the bride, basically, because if she wants purple, everybody wears purple and everybody comes in. And is more, to me, this more displays each individual person. Yeah. They can kind of express themselves through their attire. And it's kind of wild and it's kind of bright and crazy, but it's a lot different than, again, what we're used to, but it's interesting as well.
Yeah, it's just very beautiful. And even the guests who attend are very brightly dressed. It's truly a celebration of this couple that is coming together. Yeah. Some of the traditions that they associate with the food was really interesting also because I don't know that I ever think of a food that's a tradition for me that would the way they did. So for instance, coconuts, that's a symbol of prosperity. And the way it would work when they were describing a wedding is the father with his daughter, when he was giving her away to her new husband, he would hand a coconut. They'd all put their hands on the coconut, and that was a symbol of prosperity. So that was something they, and that might have been regional based on the one couple I was reading about. It didn't tell me their region, but that still was something that I'd never heard of, and I just thought it was really awesome. Honey and yogurt mixture. This one they said, and this was mentioned in a lot of the cultures, so I think this was across the regions, that instead of a wedding cake like we're traditionally used to, they used a sweet mixture, and it was usually honey and yogurt, and then the bride and groom would feed it to each other.
Huh.
So it was very similar to the cake. And then rice. So rice used to be thrown, I think, years ago back in the States, and they would throw it on the bride and groom when they would come out. And I don't know that anybody ever really knew I didn't, as a young child, didn't know why we were throwing the rice. I thought, okay. And then it stopped because, birds would eat it and everything. But they still throw rice, and it represents sustenance for them. So, and I even read in one where the bride and groom, when they would throw, they try and see who could get the most on each other. So I could see that being very messy.
Yeah.
Especially after eating the yogurt and honey mixture.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it, and I had the opportunity several years ago. A gentleman that I used to work with was from India, and his daughter got married, and it was a very elaborate event, and I would have understood it so much better if I would have had known about the background with it, because I knew theirs was multiple days. It was here in Omaha, and back when that was happening, we didn't have a huge cultural community, I don't think, when I attended, but it was at the Embassy Suites, and they actually carried her in. There was men on either side, and she came in for lack of a better word, like a canopy bed, and that's what they brought her in. But she was so elaborate, and the clothing was beautiful, and there was just so much going on. But that was something that was so educational for me, because there was so much socialization going on during the ceremony, and I was just sitting in my chair thinking, why are all these people talking or doing this?
Yeah.
But it was
how rude.
I know.
I wanted to point out too that I just watched this movie the other day, Visit Like Beckham. There's actually a Hindu wedding that occurs during the movie, and it's interesting that you say they can last up to a week, because I know the girl had been at the wedding for several hours, as the movie portrayed it that way, and she left, snuck out, went and played a soccer game, and then snuck back in, and the wedding was still going on, just like she was never gone. So that goes to show that it is very long. If you played a soccer game on today's wedding and came back, there probably wouldn't be anyone there.
Right.
Yeah. That's so funny, because the whole time she was showing that was the movie that I was recalling. Because that's the only movie I've ever seen that had a Hindu wedding, and it was so, it's actually a very good cultural movie. I think if someone wants to study that culture, they should see that movie. I don't know if everything was accurate, but just they have so many different beliefs than we do about everything, not just food, but just, the way they are with family and everything. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
That is true. And, it's funny that you guys mentioned that, because when you watch the movie without knowing this background, were you thinking that was just for the movie, or what were your thoughts on that?
I thought, well, because the movie took place in India, didn't it? No. It took place.
I can't remember. I think it was in the U.S. though.
You're right, it was, and so that's what the difference was, because it was an Indian family trying to fit in with everyone else, and their teenage daughter that had to struggle with following their parents' roles when the rest of the community had different sets. Yeah, you're right.
Cultures and beliefs. Yep, it was.
So I guess when I saw it, I was taking it as literal, just because they were very. To me, it was a movie about their cultural beliefs.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a
With
great
a little
movie.
soccer in there too.
After doing this study, Patty, I think it would be a good movie to watch too. It'd be very interesting. I almost want to watch it again now, so I can really notice these things.
It is a good movie.
I'll have to
it's a really good movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had no idea. I've seen maybe previews. I had no idea that's what it was about. So I think I actually would enjoy it after I've learned some of this stuff about the Hindu weddings. But again, like I said at the beginning, when we picked these, I thought my cultures were totally opposite. But after researching them, and I think we all found that a little bit, there's
Yep.
similarities between all of these. But these two were both based about tradition, rituals, symbolism, and they could go anywhere from a couple hours to a week long.
Right.
So they were very similar, though you wouldn't think about that when looking at it on paper.
Right.
So my last one then is my field log, and I can see, can you guys see this if I bring it up this way?
Um,
Did it come up or no?
no, I still see the Hindu wedding. I think you have to close that one out first.
Okay, hold on. And I don't know that I really have to pull this up on the screen for the tailgating one or the field log because it's just a bunch of words, but if you want me to, I can certainly do that. And I'll show you. Oh, goodness.
You can just talk. Just talk to it if you want.
You don't have to show it.
Are you doubting my ability to pull it up on the screen,
Nope,
girls?
absolutely not.
Okay, so I did my field log on tailgating, and at first I didn't really want to do that because it was one of the ones that I researched, but I thought it was a great opportunity because I've been born and raised in Omaha, Husker football, and you guys are both not from here, but you've learned it's really a cult following here with the football. And so I've been a tailgater or a football person all my life, and I consider it part of my culture. So I did mine on the College World Series, which is hosted here in Omaha and has been for years and years and years and years. And the group that I interviewed, they'd been going to the College World Series for over 32 years. And they started it back when it was just two of them as a couple, or there was four couples, and they each bought tickets to the College World Series. They each bought their 2 tickets, and then there was one additional one that they bought that went into a pool of tickets, and then they used those to share. So each family could use their two tickets plus additional ones if they wanted to. But the catch was, to use the additional tickets or those pool tickets, you had to show up to the tailgate beforehand to see if there was any available beyond your 2. So, and it was just kind of tradition that they had set up. So some of the questions that I had asked him, the first thing that I asked him is I said, tell me, why do you do the tailgating? Some people who aren't familiar with it or aren't passionate would think, these people are crazy. And he said to them, it's like a family reunion every year, but they do it at the College World Series. And again, when they started, it was just couples that were doing it. Then the couple started to have kids. They watched their kids grow. The kids started to have kids, so they became grandparents. And he said it's gone way beyond friendships. They're like their own family. And some of the kids are in each other's weddings. And he said they have grandkids joining the experience. And then I asked him, I said, well, tell me, how do you decide what food to serve? Because we were talking about the food, so that was one of the focuses. And he was talking about how a lot of people like to have grandiose menus. And if you walk around the College World Series and you see some of the tailgating that's going on, you could see why he would say that. I mean, some of them are they have steak and they're using real dishes and they're putting everything out, they're setting tables. But he liked to keep it to burgers, sausages, hot dogs, and steaks. And then he said others would bring sides and snacks. And then they had beverages of all kinds. And it had to be something for all ages because you had a wide range of people there. Whether it was at their tailgate or somebody else's, you could have somebody from infant, believe it or not, people had infants there, all the way up to somebody that was maybe 85 or older. Wow. I didn't do age checks, so. Wow. And then I asked him what his favorite thing to do at tailgating was because it is such a social event, and it's different for everyone. It definitely is. The older ones like to play cards. They would set up a card table, and whether it was poker or bridge or gin or Texas Hold'em, there was all different kinds of card games. He said, or just shoot the breeze, which I paraphrased. Some of the others, they like doing the grilling and the feeding of the people. Some people just really love to show what they can cook. And the kids, they love to run around and play. There's a lot of games that are available, like cornhole. People would make their own, have them. Frisbee. There's not a lot of grassy sections, but if they were close to grass, some people even set up badminton. And then if those of drinking age, there was a lot of drinking games that would be going on, like beer pong, or every time somebody got 3 strikes, they would do drinking games, because they actually had TVs set up too in some of their tailgates.
Nice.
And then I asked them how early they got to the stadium, because the games usually, if it's a doubleheader, there's usually maybe one at 2 and then one at 7. But it opens at 8, and there were people there at 8 getting set up and start cooking breakfast. And he said, they pay good money for the tickets, and the tickets do cost. And I guess when you're looking at the number of seats that they have, and every year that they're doing it, they want to experience everything from start to finish. And he said, they'd get there right in the morning and go till the end of the game.
Wow.
And then sometimes some of them don't even go into the game, and that's what surprised me. And when we were talking about that a little bit in my cultural study, Chandra, you said, like, yeah, that just floors me. But as you started talking to him, you could kind of see, and the excitement of being at the tailgate was also a lot of fun too. But I asked him, I said, why wouldn't you go into the game? You have these tickets. You're paying good money for them, like you had told me. And he said, they have all the luxuries of home in the parking lot. Well, not quite, no air conditioning. But he said, they do go into a lot of the games, and they have more family and friends than they do tickets, so they like to share the experience. And since they've been doing it for so long, and if it's not a team they're following, then it's easier to stay out and tailgate and let somebody else get the experience of this culture. It really is their own culture, the attending the College World Series and tailgating. And then I asked him if he'd ever give up the tickets, and he said, hell no. It's a tradition for them. It's a family tradition. It's their extended family. They pass the tickets down for generations, and there really is nothing like the experience. And living in Omaha all my life, watching what happens to the city when the College World Series comes into town, it just kind of gives me a sense of pride, because it grows. It grows with people from all cultures and from every state. There's the potential. We have people coming from all over. There's your typical teams that usually always make it, like the Texas teams. Chandra, shout out to you. But you have some underdogs that come, and a lot of times it's interesting to me, some of those underdogs become the local favorite. If there's
like Vanderbilt.
Right, exactly.
They won it.
Yeah. So, what I learned from this is this group of families have created their own subculture. They have 4 unrelated couples, and they grew up together in the College World Series, and a lot of the groups there are closer than blood relatives. And it was funny, I think that I've talked to people about it before, but when it used to be at the old venue, which was Rosenblatt, there was actually, they formed their own, what they called a small city, and it was called Dingerville, and it was where all the RVs would park, and those people came every year. They actually elected a mayor who was the mayor of Dingerville, and they'd post a sign, and the local news stations would interview him every year. And then they moved to this new venue, and that was what people were worried about losing, was their little community that they would build every single year at the College World Series.
That is crazy. I had no idea. I've never heard of that before. So I have a couple of questions. So first of all, how do they get their spot for tailgating? Because this was a couple of weeks ago, and I walked through, and it was amazing. It was just, I want to call it Tailgaters Row, because there were just a sidewalk on both sides. There were people tailgating, and they had their tents set up and TVs and their smokers. I mean, it was, and it wasn't obnoxious or anything. It was, I wanted to hang out with them. It looked so much fun. So it was, I was just curious, how did they get their spots? Did they have to reserve those?
Well, it used to be that they did have to get there early, and like any event, mark out their campground or their space. But now they've changed it, and they actually purchase their tailgating spot or their parking spot for the duration of the College World Series. I don't know the exact cost, Shonda, but I think it said it was like $1,500. So again, these people are spending a lot of money, kind of like your potlatch people. They have to spend a lot, and they're entertaining people there. But they then can use that spot. They do have to take it down every single night and set it up every morning. You can't leave it there like a campground.
Oh.
But they are a reserved spot, that the same spot they use every single day.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing then obviously they can only rent out so many spots, so it's kind of like a first come first serve kind of thing, as far as renting the spots.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, what about like drinking? Like, because with it being the NCAA inside the stadium, you can only drink alcoholic beverages if you're inside the suite area. So, I mean, do they like regulate that in the parking lot?
They do not regulate it, and actually, I think that what the actual ruling is you cannot sell alcoholic beverages at a NCAA event. So technically, the people who are tailgating, they're bringing their own beverages of choice, but there is not a lot of regulation on it. But the great thing about it is they're usually not getting out of control either, these tailgaters. It's a peaceful rivalry between people, but it's funny because so many people make it a tradition to come, whether their team's there or not, just for this tailgating event and the
I was going to say,
excitement.
I noticed that this year as I got to go to a couple College World Series games, and as I was going across the parking lot, I saw a lot of LSU, and LSU was not here this year.
Yeah.
Not an LSU fan.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. I guess if they
I
have.
looked and noticed that, and I was like, oh wow, they come anyway. It's not really about the team, about the game. I think it's about the togetherness and the tradition of it. It's
You're right.
like you had said earlier, it's like their vacation. It doesn't matter if their team goes or doesn't go, they still go.
Right.
It's true. I mean, these people are so, what's the word I want to say? Not addicted, but it's just part of their culture, and they spend a lot of money for this event because they still have to get hotel rooms. They still have to pay for their tickets. They still have to pay for all this food that they're doing, but it doesn't matter because the event is so treasured to them.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's a ritual to them. It's something they do every year, and they pretty much form their own subculture.
Right.
It is. Yeah, it definitely is. So that's what I have for you, girls.
Very interesting.
Good. Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much.
Interesting how on all the way, we just kind of picked randomly the ones that we were going to study, and for all of us, they were kind of similar.
But I see a lot of similarities in all of them, in what you studied and what Patty studied and in what I studied.
Yeah.
I mean, I see a lot of family values being displayed in pretty much all of them. Harmonies, different cultures, but to me, each of the cultures all kind of invited harmony, whether you're eating poi, out of one big pot around a bunch of people, or sharing the Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine that's in a big Dutch pot.
Yeah.
Or tailgating, it's a group of people that all come together. The Hindu wedding, a group of people that all come together, and they all enjoy great food together, and there's just a lot of harmony and tradition in that.
Well, and the one thing that you notice too, and what the whole project about, it's all around the food.
Yeah. Food is so important, and it's just amazing the significance and the symbols that everyone puts to it, not just one culture. Every culture does some way or another.
Right. And with the barbecue, the 4th of July barbecue, and with the tailgating, people bring, they have burgers and everything else, but people bring different, they invite other cultures to come in and to join them, as a piece of their community, and they actually bring in different foods from different cultures, whereas I noticed, like in the Hindu wedding, most of the foods there were all based on, was it the families of the married couple?
Right.
So the foods there, you wouldn't see cheeseburgers there per se.
Right.
It would all be foods based on those families. So that's where I see a little bit of differences, where some of them, invite any. And then the Dutch, who just throw it all in one big pot anyway.
Right.
Well, it was great. That was really a wonderful learning experience, I think.
Absolutely.
So now we got to figure out how to summarize all this.
Right, yes.
Right.
So we need to create a report, and I was reading, so we've got A, B, C, D, and E. B being the definitions. I don't know if maybe we could each take a couple of definitions, since there's 6 of them. and put them in our own words. And we've got the 6 menus that are already done.
Yep.
And then one thing that kind of stuck out at me this morning as I was reviewing this, because I know one of the deliverables that we have to give are food logs, right? That has to be separate. So for this one, it says descriptions of how each team member did her or his field study and the findings for each. So it's almost like we're putting something separate in the report from our actual food logs.
Yeah, I think, and this is just how I interpreted that, because it said, you know, description on how each team member did his or her own field studies. So it's not necessarily just the field log, so it's all three. It's the 2 menus and the log, and maybe it's more on, you know, it sounded like each of us actually did some one-on-one interviewing with people. We actually experienced some dinners and some tailgating and, you know, barbecues. It sounds like we did a lot of search engine stuff. We used a lot of the resources and things to that nature. And maybe just listing something out like that would be sufficient for that.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I think so.
So there's technically 3 things that we're going to have to create for the report. One is a discussion of cultural anthropology and food, including the procedures and perspectives anthropologists use in studying culture and how food relates to anthropology. Then D, which is what you just described, Teresa, about how we did our field studies. And then E, which is a discussion of the commonalities and differences in the food cultures across the 9 examples you studied. So,
which we kind of just did. We just have to summarize in words.
Yeah, we just had to put it on paper, because I think we've done it a lot in our discussions. And as each person was presenting, you know, you was like, oh, well, that's a lot like what I did. You know, we definitely found the things that were alike, and some of the things I think that were different. So it may just be sitting down and writing all those down and getting them on paper. Do you guys want to set up a second meeting just to sit down and together write out the definitions and bring the menus in together so we're all there and we don't have to review the work each time, and we can just set up an hour or so to get together and just go through and do those steps?
Yes, I'm good with that.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'm available tomorrow evening.
Okay.
If that works for you
guys.
I could do it tomorrow evening too, and I think, like you had mentioned before, Teresa, I'd love to do it while it's still fresh in our mind.
Absolutely.
Just summarize it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I will set up a meeting invite and send it out to you guys. I will have to wait till about 6:30. We do have swim lessons tomorrow, but we should be back home about 10 after 6, so that'll give me time to get home and get logged in.
Okay, 6:30 works for me.
6:30?
Yeah, never worry about the time, because usually I'm getting home right around the same time, 6 or 6:15, so I'll just make sure I'm here, but that sounds great.
Okay,
and
perfect.
Then this one won't have to be recorded, then we can just do a regular hangout.
Yep, and I think we just put all of our stuff together, so if everyone can make sure you have all of your stuff on not hard copies, but on soft copies saved, which it shows that we all did because as we were presenting it, but I think we can just take those things, cut, paste, copy, and make a nice solid report out of it once we decide exactly how we want to present it.
Okay, I like it.
Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Yep, great. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks for getting up early, Teresa.
Yeah, I had to get up and do something with it was like this when I was.
Oh.
Well, I appreciate the take 2. So.
Yeah, no, it was fine. I actually learned more this time. So.
All right, Teresa, just send us a note and make sure that it recorded, okay?
Okay, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast, and I will go to my channel. It should be out there because I've been broadcasting the entire time, and it says we're live still on the screen. A good thing is we don't have any viewers right now, so.
Yes, that is good.
If it doesn't work this time, we're calling a reviewer, and they're going to sit through it live with us and listen to us do our team meeting.
I agree. Okay, guys, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for your time today.
Talk to you later.
We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.